Welcome, or welcome back, to another edition of Quick Picks with Just Facts Combat. This week, we're diving into a highly underrated Fight Night card featuring Derrick Lewis against the undefeated and dangerous rising star, Tallison Teixeira. But first, let's break down the opening fight of the night. We have Fatima Kline facing off against Melissa Martinez, and here's the breakdown. To keep it short and sweet, I'm going with Fatima Kline. She's the more skilled fighter by far. While Martinez is tough and can definitely take a punch, she doesn't seem to dish it out with the same effectiveness. On the other hand, Kline is the complete opposite. She's got the skills to dominate from range and, if Martinez tries to make it a brawl, Kline's Muay Thai will make it a nightmare for her. Kline is also the better grappler in this matchup. If Martinez tries to mix things up and take it to the ground, I see Kline outclassing her there as well, possibly even submitting her. Final prediction: Fatima Kline by decision or submission. Mitch Ramirez versus Mike Davis. Mike Davis is the more well-rounded fighter here. While Mitch Ramirez has power, Davis should be able to avoid being clipped and take the fight where he excels the most, on the ground. He's shown improvements in his striking, and if he can tire out Ramirez with takedowns, he'll eventually find a finish. Final prediction: Mike Davis via submission or TKO. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus Valter Walker. A classic striker versus grappler matchup. Kennedy Nzechukwu is the superior striker, but if Valter Walker gets his hands on him, it's trouble. Walker's grappling is his strength. He'll look to crash into Kennedy, take him down, and smother him. If Kennedy can stuff the early takedowns and avoid getting overwhelmed, he could land a KO shot as Walker tires. He could also catch him coming in, as Valter's defense is trash. However, I think Walker's relentless pressure will eventually wear Nzechukwu down, and if he survives the early rounds, Kennedy could turn the tables. Final prediction: Valter Walker via submission or decision. Kennedy TKO is also possible. Lauren Murphy versus Eduarda Moura. Lauren Murphy is a tough, durable veteran, but I think her limitations have made it tough for her to advance past a contender at this point. Eduarda Moura has better hands and underrated range control, which will help her against Murphy. Though Moura still has a lot of room for improvement defensively, I don't think Murphy's striking will overwhelm her. Moura will likely take Murphy down at some point, where Murphy struggles the most. Once on the ground, I see Moura controlling Murphy and possibly submitting her for the win. Final prediction: Eduarda Moura via decision or submission. Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. Chidi Njokuani has looked focused and dangerous, and there's potential for a Buckley-like run in the welterweight division for him. But Jake Matthews isn't an easy fight. Matthews can pressure Njokuani and mix in his takedowns, but if he spends too much time in front of Chidi, he'll get tagged and hurt. Njokuani's takedown defense is solid now, making it tough for Matthews to take him down. If they stay standing, I see Chidi eventually landing a clean shot and putting Matthews away. Matthews boxes in a straightforward line too, so as we saw in Chidi last fight, I feel Matthews will end up dealing with the same situation if he doesn't box at an angle here. It will also be hard for him to mix in his takedowns this way, so it would be completely neutralized to a striking affair and will eventually get clipped. Or he clips Chidi if he mistimes a kick or strike, and Matthews can use this to get in the pocket and land. But I will take my chances with Chidi here to continue his welterweight run. I won't be shocked if Matthews' volume and ability to take risks and mix it up gives him enough trouble to throw him off his game though. And at a decent size underdog bet, Matthews is a live dog here too, so don't forget that. Final prediction: Chidi Njokuani via TKO or decision. Max Griffin versus Chris Curtis. Both Max Griffin and Chris Curtis are gritty veterans, but if this turns into a pure striking battle, Curtis has the edge. He's a flat-footed boxer who hates grappling, but his takedown defense has improved over time. Griffin won't want to stand and bang with Curtis for too long, and he'll likely look for a takedown, but Curtis' pace and cardio will make that difficult for Griffin. Griffin has the power to crack, but Curtis' relentless style and better cardio will likely put him in a position to win this one, either via TKO or decision. Final prediction: Chris Curtis via decision or TKO. Junior Tafa versus Tuco Tokkos. Junior Tafa could be a real threat in the division if he learned to grapple, but despite some improvements, he remains primarily a striker. He's got the tools to finish opponents, but Tuco Tokkos can make this fight more straightforward by leaning on his wrestling. If Tokkos uses his grappling wisely, he could win and even finish Tafa in the later rounds. But if Tokkos gets tempted into striking with Tafa, he'll likely regret it. Tafa has better striking technique, more power, and a better chin. Tokkos has been known to panic when he gets clipped, and against Tafa, that's a mistake. If Tokkos can control the fight with wrestling, he might surprise us. But I'm leaning towards Tafa finishing this one if Tokkos chooses to brawl. Final prediction: Junior Tafa via TKO or decision. with a small sprinkle on Tokkos as a live underdog. Vitor Petrino vs Dejuan Lane. Vitor Petrino is making the move up to heavyweight, which is interesting because he didn't seem to struggle too much at light heavyweight. Dejuan Lane, almost 40 years old, has shown solid improvements but remains a durable heavyweight. He's a late-blooming MMA fighter who transitioned from football, so while he's improving, I think Petrino has the upper hand. Petrino's striking and kicking game will be key here. Lane has shown vulnerabilities to body strikes, so that could be an opening for Petrino. If Petrino tries to take the fight to the ground early on, it might be more difficult than expected, but once Lane starts to slow down, something we've seen in nearly all his fights, Petrino should have his number, whether on the feet or the ground. Final prediction: Vitor Petrino via submission, TKO, or decision. Nate Landwehr vs Morgan Charriere. Nate Landwehr is a fan favorite for his all-gas, no-break style, but this aggressive approach can get him into trouble, especially when he's facing someone who can match his pace and fight smarter. Enter Morgan Charriere. Charriere can keep up with Landwehr's intensity, but he's also more slick on defense, making it hard for Landwehr to break him. Charriere also boasts excellent takedown defense, which will likely frustrate Landwehr if he tries to mix in some wrestling. I see Charriere picking Landwehr off with strikes, using his superior distance management to keep Landwehr at bay. This will force Landwehr into a slower, more technical pace, which plays right into Charriere's strengths. Final prediction: Morgan Charriere via decision or TKO. Calvin Kattar vs Steve Garcia. Both fighters here are known for bringing the heat, and we could definitely see an all-out war. However, I feel Kattar has lost some of the pop in his strikes. He's more about pace now than power, and I think that's where Garcia can shine. Garcia's punches have more snap behind them, and I see him being able to hurt Kattar. Now, Kattar's toughness is well known. He's incredibly durable and hard to finish, but I think the cumulative damage he's taken is starting to show. Garcia might be able to wear him down and get the finish, though a dominant decision is also in play. That said, if Kattar adapts like some of the veteran fighters we've seen recently, such as Beneil Dariush, he might have some success. Garcia isn't a wrestler and has shown vulnerability to takedowns, but his defense has improved lately, so Kattar may need to rethink his strategy. Final prediction: Steve Garcia via TKO or decision. Stephen Thompson vs Gabriel Bonfim. Moving to the co-main event, it's nice to see Wonderboy Stephen Thompson still getting some love and being featured on the top half of cards, but if I'm being honest, I think it's time for him to retire. He's past his prime, and I don't see him matching up with many in the top 15 anymore. But hey, Dana must still be keeping him around for some reason. As for Gabriel Bonfim, he's shown growth since his upset loss to Dalby. He seems to understand that being undefeated doesn't mean invincible, and now fights with a more realistic approach. Thompson's karate and movement will give Bonfim some trouble, as it does with most opponents, but Bonfim can make adjustments. Bonfim will want to pressure Thompson with leg kicks, and given that Thompson isn't really a KO threat anymore, he could push the pace. Bonfim's grappling could also come into play, which is where Thompson struggles. I expect Bonfim to eventually take the fight to the ground, either securing a dominant position or finding a submission for a career-defining win. Final prediction: Gabriel Bonfim via decision, submission, or TKO. Derrick Lewis vs Tallison Teixeira. We've arrived at the main event. The UFC seems eager to push the new heavyweight sensation, Tallison Teixeira, who's only just debuted in his last fight. That debut was a strong performance, with a solid finish over ranked heavyweight Justin Tafa, so this fight does make sense in that context. To get to the point, Derrick "Six-Pack" Lewis is going to need to bring his A-game if he wants to stand a chance here. Tallison's defense is far from great. He's extremely hittable and fights like a typical tall fighter, with his chin exposed. I see Lewis having the power to flatline him if he can capitalize on this. That said, Teixeira will likely use his height and pressure to back Lewis up against the cage, where he could work for a takedown or land some devastating elbows. Lewis, however, has learned from past mistakes, like when Tai Tuivasa knocked him out, and will probably be more cautious in these positions. Still, I can see Lewis getting tempted to throw from range, trying to clip Teixeira, which worked out poorly for Justin Tafa. It would be wise for Lewis to pick his shots more carefully, and avoid getting caught in a clinch. If Teixeira can trap him against the cage, I see him either finishing with strikes or controlling the fight enough to score a submission. Lewis definitely doesn't want to end up on his back, especially with the dangerous ground and pound Teixeira brings. I believe Lewis has the better cardio and experience, but at this point, I'm not sure where he's at in his career mentally. Joining the UFC over a potential big payday in the PFL doesn't make sense to me, and unless he scores a huge win here, it seems like he'll remain a stepping stone for younger heavyweights. Final prediction: Tallison Teixeira via TKO or submission.